leader for the delegation on the fact-finding visit to Spain.
Thanks, Cecilia. Well, I'd like to start by asking for your patience a little bit, because this is probably the last time I'll get the chance to talk about these petitions, and we've been working on these petitions throughout the whole of this Parliament, but because of Brexit, we won't be taking this forward. So, sorry, I didn't expect. Obviously, they're very emotional petitions, and we've, in my team, have worked very closely with the petitioners and with others, and I think what's really refreshing is that although there's still a lot of pain and a lot of people feeling that they're still in a wilderness, actually there are things moving. And that's a really nice thing to be able to report 1 year on from the mission. We had, as you know, it was a very difficult, very intense mission to Madrid, a very packed agenda, meeting all of the interlocutors. And the report that we adopted, I think, really reflected the overall feeling in the delegation, and it also reflected the demands and the requests that petitioners had made of this Parliament. And I think what we've heard from the petitioners today is very clearly that actually we have made a massive difference as the Petitions Committee. And it's very rare that you can say that the Petitions Committee has had a direct impact on addressing a situation. And this felt, when we first started, like a situation of kind of lost cause. Individual parents, siblings, children looking for their relatives, their parents, their siblings, their children, feeling like they were in a wilderness. And through the work of the Petitions Committee, we've actually given those people a hope and a unity, which I think we have to recognise as something very powerful. So I hope that that will continue beyond my time in Parliament and beyond the work of this Parliament before the elections. But with all of that context, I was absolutely delighted on Tuesday to receive an email from Madrid saying that the Spanish Congress of Deputies had adopted unanimously the state law on stolen babies. The proposal adopted includes the vast majority of our recommendations. It has our fingerprints all over it, and it shows that the meeting that we had in Madrid with the Justice Committee of the Spanish Congress of Deputies, where national parliamentarians said to each other how unbelievably shameful it was for them that it took a delegation from the European Parliament to come to Madrid to try and unblock the political dialogue in Madrid between parties. I think this is really something to be recognised. So I just very quickly wanted to highlight some of the key elements which is in that legislation, which directly relate to our recommendations. The first is that it calls for all the necessary resources to be made available for the pursuit of truth, justice and reparation for so-called theft of babies in Spain since 17th of July 1936. And this is so important because part of the debate has, as we know, very emotionally, has been about when this started and how you deal with the legacy of the Spanish Civil War. And we know there are different periods in this scandal, but recognising that the starting point is the Spanish Civil War is really important for victims and really important in terms of that long pursuit, the long, Nelson Mandela, everybody is quoting Nelson Mandela this year in his centenary, but that long arm of justice, very important to recognise right from the beginning. It recognises a right to truth, meaning victims will have the right to access documents from state and private archives and institutions, including hospitals, cemeteries, local and national government. It establishes a national DNA database, vital to find people. It recognises that victims, as we've heard from our petitioners, that actually they have rights to access medical, legal and psychological assistance for free, and that the burden should be taken off the victims in terms of the pursuit of truth. Because many of the people that we met in Madrid and that we've seen in the Petitions Committee over the years are crippled by the burden of the search for their family members. But this is only the start of the legislative process. It's the first. It's very important that it was voted on Tuesday, but we know we're legislators, we're parliamentarians, we know that that's only the start of the process. And just as we as a Petitions Committee have helped get to this point, we now can't stand back. We have to encourage the Spanish Parliament to go all the way through, and that these proposals, implementing our recommendations, come out of the sausage machine of national politics in order to actually deliver concrete rights to the petitioners who we've been representing. That's one side of it, very positive, and I also acknowledge that at regional level in Spain, there are things which are moving much quicker in different states and regions in Spain, which is really positive as well. But we've also, over the last year, had a number of contacts which I also would like to recognise. The first is, and I'm thrilled that His Excellency the Archbishop, the Apostolic Nuncio to the EU, Mr. Monsignor Le Bopin is here, but the contact has been very positive in trying to find a way that we can also address concerns that we raised in Madrid about access to ecclesiastical archives. In contact with the Commission and through written questions to the Commission have confirmed that the ecclesiastical archives are subject to the GDPR regulation, and therefore they should be accessible to anybody who is concerned to find their data in those archives. In Madrid, we had the confirmation from the Spanish Bishops' Conference that they would be willing to work with the Ministry of Justice to bring together the ecclesiastical archives together with public archives to allow people to access them and find the information included in baptismal records and other records held by the Church. I would really like to see movement on that front. I think that would be a really great step forward, and it's worth mentioning. I would particularly, and here really special thanks to the Commission's Child Rights and Victims' Rights units, who have followed us all the way through since we started these petitions, raising the applicability of the Victims' Rights Directive. And I reiterate, anybody, and there are many cases which have been archived but not closed in Spain because either it was felt that the people weren't able to close them because the people have died who were involved, or that information was missing. All cases which are archived have rights under the Victims' Rights Directive, as we've heard from the Commission today. And we need to see action from the Spanish authorities to ensure that the Victims' Rights Directive is fully implemented in relation to these cases. I'd also like to recognise that the petitioners themselves have self-organised, and there's been the creation of the international network called We're Looking For You, which is part of the reason why more international examples are being raised, as we heard from Ruth. But we need to think about how we support that network. It's self-organised, but it is vulnerable people who are searching out, trying to find support. And I think we as a Petitions Committee need to think about what we could do. I'd particularly like to thank Antonio Alonso from the National Centre, the INTCF, who has consistently been in contact with me, has regularly emailed information from Spain, has explained things which are going on, and I think that's important. So having said all of this, and because it's my last chance to speak on this, I think that much has progressed, but there's still an awful lot to do. So as a committee, what we should be doing is keeping these petitions open, because by shining an international light on what's going on, we're actually creating the momentum inside Spain for that search for truth. And I think we should write to the President of the Spanish Parliament and to the Chair of the Justice Committees in the Spanish Parliament to say that we would love to be able to close these petitions and to hand the baton of the concerns raised to us to Spanish parliamentarians. But in order to do that, we need to see that legislation, which was adopted on Tuesday, come through the Spanish Parliament system and come out of the other end as a full national system to deal with the cases of stolen babies. So that's where I would end, but I think we had great cooperation, not just in this committee, but with the petitioners and with colleagues in Madrid. There is a lot of press interest in this, both in Spain but also outside Spain. And it's only through that light and the focus and the public debate that we're able to get answers for people who've been burdened and pulled down by the pressure of that search, where many have felt that they're searching in the wilderness, but actually there are lots of people standing with them trying to help them get the answers. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jude. And as chair for this committee, let me just extend to you my deepest and warmest thanks for the work that you did on this. It is a shining example of a dignified method and a beautiful accomplishment, and you personally should always keep with you this manner of a combination of determination, passion, and compassion. And at the end, truth is going to prevail and shine forth. Thank you very, very much on behalf of the committee. You did a beautiful job.